Hey, good afternoon. Tom Ginn, your host for G-Force. G is for gratitude. I will be right back. I'm excited to introduce my guest today, but we'll be right back. G is for gratitude. Good afternoon. Tom Ginn here. G-Force. G is for gratitude. I believe gratitude is at the foundational thinking process to keep us in a place, no matter what's going on in our life, our trials, our tribulations, our struggles, our hurts, our disappointments. When we go to a place of gratitude, you really can't occupy a negative and a positive thought at the same time. There's good in everything. Take away, no matter what's happening in your life, go to that place of gratitude and see where it takes you. I believe it opens up the paths to higher levels of understanding and awareness in a positive way. I use it in my coaching, and it's changed my life dramatically, got me out of being a victim and being grateful for what I have, not what I don't have. And I've studied that principle in very deep ways. And I believe it's a foundational way to improve your life and how we think and how we view the world. If we can just go to a place of gratitude, no matter what's happening. And so that's why I established this program is through my coaching is to just bring new level of awareness, bringing in guests like my guest today. I'm really excited for a fabulous story, struggles and trials and tribulations he's going to share with you. I saw his interview on, I always like to drop the name of Ken Walls here recently, and I owe everything to Ken to introduce me to being able to put on a platform like this to help people share their story. We don't know whose lives we're going to touch today. So I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Walt McKinley. He's a speaker, a trainer, a #1 best-selling author of the book Monsters in My House. It's a true story. And he's going to talk about his journey and his struggles and his victories today with nothing but excitement and enthusiasm and gratitude. I'm going to introduce you to Walt. How are you doing, Walt?
Man, what's going on, brother? I just love it. G-force, gratitude. It is a force of nature because where your mind goes, your energy flows. And I promise you, the more gratitude you have in your life, the better your life automatically becomes. It is literally an instantaneous transition. So I just love the whole theme of your show. And obviously, you and I talked quite a few times so far. And I just love your spirit. So thank you so much for having me on.
It's an honor to have you here in that. Your story is definitely going to impact somebody. We all know somebody that's struggling, hurting, has had trauma in their life. And if we're just aware of it, then we can say, hey, somebody's been through this before, right? I'm not the only one out there that struggles in life. Yeah. And who can I turn to? What's the encouragement? What hope do we have to bring to the world? And today, hopefully that's the message that somebody will recognize it and share it out there. So, so I'm just want to encourage everybody that's watching this, tag and share, reply, send it out to even on the replay, send it out to your friends and family because I know Walt's story is impactful. And, that's something we talked about a little bit. I always like to do a Tomism here for a minute. Your voice becomes stronger when you hear the other person's voice first. And I think that's important as we improve ourselves and want to have an influence in the world is go to a place of, do you see me? Do you hear me? And do you really care? And Walt, I know that's where your heart is as well. So to make a difference. So I'm going to turn this over to you, and it's all about you, your story. Just share, just where you're at and your journey. A little bit about maybe, what are you grateful for today?
So I love this. I actually start my morning saying 3 gratitudes every day. Typically at nighttime, I'll pray for things, right? Or pray to God to give me strength and continue to help me surrender. But every morning, I don't pray for anything. I'm just grateful to start my day because it really does start my mind in a place of positivity. And so, number one of the things I said today was to come join you today, Tom. So I'm so excited to be here. And number two is I love this whole journey that I've been on the last year and a half, and we'll get into the story piece of it. But my wife of 23 years, she's got a marketing background. She's always supported my career. And just in the last couple of weeks, she said, you know what? Like, I know that the social media aspect of this and building out things that you're going to post isn't really your jam. Speaking and going on podcasts and stages, training, that's what you do well. I love the stuff that nobody else sees. I love the building those things that we can go ahead and post for you. So she's taken an opportunity to teach herself Canva, to teach herself Adobe Pro Editor, where we could take clips from stages that I've been on. We could take clips of my Audible book that should be approved in the next 5 days by Amazon, and really just step in and take a huge chunk and burden off of me as I build this business so that I can serve in a greater capacity. So just to have a teammate in life like that, it's such a blessing, and I'm so grateful for her, and how she's stepping up to even do more than just kind of support this journey.
Yeah, it's that's a blessing when we have relationships, not only our significance, but other people that are supporting us on that journey. That uh, to make an impact in the world, we can't do it by ourselves, right?
That's right.
But it starts with us. Would you agree? As we improve, then we can have influence on other people. It's transferable, and that's how we make a difference in the world, from my perspective. So let's do this. Your story and your why. Tell a little bit about where you live, what you do. And you jump into your story, and then I know we have a topic that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
But let's, this before we get into that, just share a little bit about Walt.
Well, I love it. Thanks for asking that. And really, my story is a triumph story. Some people, depending on how their mentality is, can see it as a trauma story, but really, it is the victory in everything that I've done. And so, I've got 2 amazing teenage daughters. I've been blessed to be married for 23 years and together with my wife for 26. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a retired naval intelligence officer. Did 20 years in the military, went to corporate America for 5 years, became an executive in a Fortune 5. And I don't say that in a bragging way. I only just say that to say, while I was in corporate America, I realized I wasn't fulfilling my purpose. I wasn't stepping into the power of my story in a greater way that can truly help transform somebody else's life. And so it's interesting that you asked this. And so for me, I just wrote down a goal about 2 weeks ago. And the goal is to help 1 million people heal from their trauma and own their story, and also change their family's generational cycle of trauma. And I can't do that alone. And Tom, that's what's so great about what you said at the beginning. It really is the power in all of our testimonies that changes humanity. And good Lord, we all know that we need it right now because humanity is struggling.
I want to say this. Thank you for serving. Stepping up. I have great gratitude for this beautiful country we live in, and so many people take it for granted. And it's those that have stepped up that potentially put everything on the line for the rights and freedoms and blessings that this country gives us. So I like to not hide that from anybody. So thank you for serving. It's much appreciated.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. What I love is I'll tell you guys about my story now. And the warrior isn't because I served in the military. And I'll get to my point of what this tagline on this shirt means, because it really is empowerment of your story and your trauma. And so I moved 14 times in the first 16 years of my life. I was tortured, physically, emotionally abused, neglected, starved by every adult that I knew until I was almost 16 years old. My father, my stepmother, my mother, she never hit me, but there was not a lot of neglect. My stepfather and foster parents. So the only thing I knew was distrust of adults growing up, because the only love I ever received was in the form of physical or emotional punishment. And you know, when you talk about purpose and you talk about why, at 13 years old, I almost took my own life. You know, this culmination of these moments that got me to this point of feeling so empty and feeling alone and feeling isolated and feeling like nobody cared about me because I was just thrown around like a piece of garbage my entire life. To the point where my father, and I'll tell you guys a little story about this. We had been bounced around from parent to parent. My father, at 13 years old, he's talking to his new girlfriend. And look, y'all, I'm telling you guys, when his girlfriend was over, I was glad, because he was really charming when she came over. And he's talking to her, and they're going to go to Disneyland. They're going to go to a baseball game, and they're going to go to the beach. And at the kitchen table that night, which we never sat at the kitchen table unless she was there, at the kitchen table that night, I'm excited. Here I am, this 13-year-old boy. And I'm thinking to myself, we going to Disneyland. Like, gone was this 13-year-old kid who was trying to be cool to everybody else in the world. Because we, you know, if you've got kids in junior high, you know, that's like this weird age where you're trying to find the balance between being cool and just transitioning from being a kid to a young adult. And I'll never forget, they're talking about it and they're hyping it up. And we finished dinner, and she leaves. And I tell my dad, I said, "Oh man, Dad, since you're leaving on Thursday, I can go because I don't have practice on Friday, because I play basketball." And he looked at me almost kind of bewildered that I would think that I would be able to go. And he told me, he said, "Well, what makes you think you're going to go?" And I said, "Well, I thought I was going to be able to go. I thought you were talking about it, you know." And I used to stutter really bad when I was that age, and because of the trauma that I had been through. And he goes, "Well, I love her and not you. So what makes you think that I would take you?" And it was like a flashback of 13 years of being beat, abused, thrown in basements, chained to beds, torturous abuse happening to me, that culminated in that moment that I said I was going to take my life. But what I didn't realize in that moment, what I came to realize later, is all of those things meant to break me, that should have destroyed my sanity and my soul, only really did make me unbreakable. And so for those of you guys who are going to listen to this live, and hey Ted, how you doing, brother? And those of you guys who are going to listen to this on replay, I want you to think of your life resume as I'm talking about my own story. And I want you to remember those times when you didn't think you were going to make it. And the fact that you're still here. And the fact that you're so much more resilient than you ever would have been. And the fact that your spirit is unbreakable. But in this moment, I felt like my spirit maybe did break. And my dad left for the weekend, and I tried to take my own life. I went to school that Thursday because I knew I would get beat if I didn't go to school. I went to school that Friday because I knew I would get beat if I didn't go to school, even though I didn't feel like I would be there when he returned on Sunday. And that Saturday morning, Friday night, I had written a suicide note that I actually didn't see again until I was 19. It was almost like I had blocked that from my memory. And that Saturday morning, I woke up in the morning, and I'll never forget, I walked into the kitchen, and it was like this rage, this hatred, this just, this pit of despair that I lived in, that I know that there's people living in because they haven't faced their trauma. I was 13. I didn't know how to face it. The only facing I was doing was just surviving the day, not thriving or healing. And I just kind of lathered myself up and I started screaming, "I hate you. And I hope you guys, I hope you guys hate yourself, because when I'm not here anymore, and I hope you know what it's like to feel like me." And I'm screaming all these things. And I grabbed the knife and I walked into the bathroom and I go to take my own life. And still to this day, like I turn the sink on, right? I turn the sink on and I put my wrist under it because I don't want to make a mess, because subconsciously I'm afraid of getting beat. Right? All these things that I'm still like in robot mode and surviving, because I know the repercussions if I do anything wrong. And I went to put the knife into my wrist and ended up in paralysis. I couldn't move. Even though emotionally I could feel the turmoil in me, I couldn't move. And I heard something whisper, "It's not your time." Now I'm in this house by myself at 13. And mind you, I don't know spirituality. I don't know God. And everybody's spirituality is different. For me, it's God. And so I don't know God. There's no God in my homes. And something literally grabbed my hand and shook the knife out of my hand. And it scared the hell out of me, really. And then it was like a warmth came over me. And it was the same warmth that I remember being 8 years old and 7 years old, being thrown in a damp, dark, musty basement in Indiana. Literally feeling like I would never come out. The Halloween mask that my stepfather would throw in there with me that would terrify me and come to life in my imagination. And him at the top of the stairs looking down and glaring at me and slamming the door shut and hearing that lock click, getting to the brink of my sanity. It was this warmth that came over me in those moments that kept me from losing my mind. And it came over me again. And I would need that warmth. I would need that comfort. And it was like this golden body armor. I'll never forget it. It was like in my imagination, I felt this all happening to me from the inside out. And it was like this golden body armor coming over me. And you know how it kind of layers on the chest and it's got like the ab look and ripples on it. And that's what it was like. And I would need that armor that God put on my soul to survive the next 2.5 years of abuse that escalated the older I got.
Wow.
Until I chose, and this is the thing, guys, right? Even at 15 and a half, I had a choice to leave my home. And I ran from my father, but I didn't run from him. And I used to say this a lot because it's all mind, right? I didn't run from him. I ran into my life. There's a difference. There's a difference. And so, Tom, I want to just make sure if you have any questions, stop right there. But I'm going to continue the story after that to kind of bring you guys to my why and what I'm doing and why I'm doing it today. But I'll pause just for a second right there.
Well, that experience of the voice and the knocking the knife out of your hand, that guardian angels, we all have them,
Mm-hmm.
and you're here for a reason. It's not your time, and we don't let God control that one, right? Let God control that one. I would just want to acknowledge Ted Legal, a friend of mine. Very similar, no two stories are similar, but people go through trauma, different hurts. And I know Ted, and he's sharing his as well. Ted, you're an awesome guy. Just acknowledge, that you've gone through similar. And here you are standing strong. He's a warrior too. Ted's a great guy. He's got a great story as well. So just want to acknowledge Ted. Just share this out, my friend. So wow. Why don't you keep going where you want to go? So
awesome. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And Ted, I just want to say I'm proud of you, brother. And it's the power in a community focused on a movement to change humanity. And the power really does come from all of our stories and all of our testimonies to help those people walking in the darkness, feeling alone still, that maybe haven't done the work, maybe don't know how to do the work, which we'll talk about in the 4 keys, but also that are just like, they just need to know that they're not alone and by themselves. So thank you for sharing that, brother. I appreciate that. And I want you to know, I don't take that for granted. And obviously I'm, Tom, so I know, he doesn't too. So I kind of go back to this pivotal moment, literally the pivotal moment of my life. I'm sitting on the apartment step. My father's, he's drunk and passed out. He had told me as he bumped into me going up the steps, don't leave the top step. We were on the 2nd floor. I'm sitting there with 5 of my friends and me, and 2 of them were girls, and one of them I really liked. I know you guys can remember that 15-and-a-half-year-old testosterone that we all had. And she takes my hat, she takes off running. She's like, "You can't catch me." And I said, "I promise you I can." And so I'm chasing her, and she's running with my hat. And I told this story at a speaking event in Denver, and I said, the sun was like, the glow of the sun was like hitting her blonde hair and her sparkly, it was glitter and like all the things, because the hormones that you have at that age. And I'm chasing her, and my friends are running to him. We're all cracking up, and I catch her, and she turns around and gives me a hug and puts a hat back on my head. And and in this moment of euphoria, in this moment of like feeling loved.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I can hear my father coming marching down the middle of the street. Now, my dad wasn't big. He was like 5'9", 160 pounds maybe. He was very intimidating to me because of all the oppression that I had gone through from him. And so he's marching down the street and I can hear him, boy, what did I tell you? This army voice, although he had served 2 years in the army, he just like loved like the intimidation of this voice, like a drill instructor. And he goes, you better get your ass back over here. 1, 2. And so I'm like going towards him, mortified in this moment. There's literally people walking their dogs on the sidewalk. There's people pushing babies in a stroller. It's still really hot because the Arizona sun was about 110 that day. And it's warm, but it's early evening. And I'm like, Dad, I was just going to get my hat. And he said, and these are the moments that you don't know God is actually pushing you in a direction. Those guardian angels we have are pushing you in a direction, even though we feel like they're some of the most horrific moments of our life. In retrospect, they actually become the pivotal moments of our life. And I said, Dad, I said, I was just getting my hat, and he moves because he's left-handed and he punches me in my face and knocks my hat sideways. And I can hear my friends, people stop on the street. He's screaming and he goes, don't you effing lie to me. Now he's drunk, right? And I said, Dad, and I start crying. I'm like, Dad, I was just getting my hat. And he punches me in my head again and knocks the hat off my head. And in this moment, at this point, it's like 15 and a half years of all this trauma and all this abuse. And many times when I could have told somebody, but I was too scared to do it because the fear of the unknown kept me paralyzed and where I was. And this happens to us even as adults, guys. This fear of the unknown paralyzes us when, if we look at our life resume and every time we run through the fear of the unknown, every time, Ted, you've ran through that. Tom, you've ran through that. Anybody else who's going to watch this, you've always received the lesson you were supposed to receive or gotten what you were hoping to get. And so here I am in this moment. And I look up at this man and I can see the pain and the hate in his eyes from the abuse that he endured as a child. From the when he was 16 years old and a man groomed a bunch of boys in the neighborhood and molested him. I can see the pain in this man's eyes, and he's just projecting this generational cycle of abuse onto me. And in that moment, my synapses are flying, right? I'm like, oh my God, okay, so if I run, like, am I going to be back in foster home? And all I can think about is literally being thrown in closets and splinters being put underneath my fingernails and the torture I endured by my foster mother when I was 3. And that's going through my mind. And then I'm like, are they going to send me back with my mom? And I hadn't seen my mom in 5 years at this point. I don't even know where she lives. I hadn't even talked to her. I'm thinking like, are they going to give me to my aunt who's she's the youngest sister of 8. My dad's the oldest brother, who's fighting with CPS to try to get custody of me and do it on the down low so my dad doesn't find out and think that and know that I told. Then I'm thinking like, or are they going to stick me back with my dad? Are they going to stick me back with him? And he's going to know I'm a traitor. He told me if I ever told, he would kill me. Because mind you, that was 30 years ago. CPS still struggles, I think, sometimes now, but it was way different 30 years ago. And I just said, I got to choose me. I have to choose me. And I just ran. And I'm telling you, Usain Bolt couldn't have caught me. And he's screaming, you better get your ass back over here. 1, 2. And for me, he's right behind me. He never even ran. He's just right behind me and I'm running. But in my mind, he's right behind. It's like a lion, a lion chasing a man. That's what it felt like. And I'm sprinting. And we went around. He didn't chase me. We went, hid back and hid in my friend's apartment building, which was like 2 buildings over from where I was at. And in this moment, I realized for the first time in my life, I had the courage to choose me. For the first time in my life, I'm actually going to get an opportunity to speak my truth. It was like one of the most horrific and amazing days all at once. And so the police come, they find my father searching for me in the apartments and arrest him. My aunt comes and she takes me. And as they're leading him to the cop car, he's like, I hope your friends are worth it, boy. I hope you're happy now, boy. And he's just talking to me in this way. And I'm devastated. I'm bawling. This 15-and-a-half-year-old broken child. I'm bawling because I'm putting my dad in court. In jail, and I feel horrible. But on the other hand, I'm like, yes, like you deserve to get put in that cop car right now. And so 6 months later, I ended up testifying against him in jail. For about 6 months, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was a ward of the state. They let my aunt have temporary custody. We had to go through all the legal stuff, right? And I go to testify against my dad in jail. And he's out to make me a liar. He asked the judge to separate all 6 of us kids, my 5 friends and me. He calls us in one by one, has a sheriff watch us so we can't corroborate stories because we're lying. Every single kid before me said he punched me with his left hand. And my aunt said in the courtroom, they're like looking and they're like pivoting and they're like, left hand, everyone. So when I got in the courtroom, he was pissed. His defense was gone. And he starts berating me on the witness stand, staring at me and berating me and intimidating me. But instead of being scared, I still felt bad, but instead of being scared, because I chose to run through the fear and into my future that day 6 months ago, the next time that I've got this opportunity to speak my truth feels different to me. I feel different. I feel more like that inner lion inside of me is coming out. And at one point, the judge stops and says, Mr. McKinley, if you berate your son like that again, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. And so my dad, he's out to make me a liar, and he's trying to say that I'm lying and asking me questions in different ways to get me to change my story. And my story is the same. And he goes, you're lying, aren't you? And I leaned forward in that witness stand and I said, you're the liar. You're the liar, and you've been beating me my whole life. All I've done is gotten beat by every single one of you I've ever lived with. You're lying. And I'm like yelling at this point in the courtroom. And he goes, boy, and kind of looks down and looks back at me. And the judge goes, I've heard enough. Mr. McKinley, I have heard enough. He looks at me and goes, son, you could get down. You did an amazing job. Just go back over there and stand by the lawyer. And he held my dad in contempt, but more importantly, I'll never forget, they read it off. They go, in the case of the state versus Walter McKinley Sr., I find you guilty of felony child abuse. And we remand custody to Diana, who was my aunt, until the minor's 18. And I thought, and it wasn't like jubilation, right? Like these moments aren't met with jubilation. It was like, I sat back in the chair and I thought, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. At 16, it was the first time in my life I felt like I wouldn't be abused anymore. I felt like I wouldn't need to survive anymore. But I also found an inner strength that I didn't even know that I had. Because of the one time that I chose to run into the fear, that became the second time I chose to run into the fear and face my abuser. That became the story and how I narrate my life and how I opened up space for other people to share their story, Tom. Because God gifted me my trauma. He gifted me my trauma in such a horrific fashion to reach the unreachable. Ted, like what you're talking about in there, those people who've been through the hardest things in life and are still here standing are given a gift to step into their purpose. And because I've used this as my purpose to help other people heal, and I haven't done it through master classes or courses. I'm doing all that now as a professional entrepreneur, but I did it in the military for 2 decades. It's the way that I led. I did it in corporate America. It's the way that I lead, with heart. And I have opened up space for people to really, truly change the lineage of their families, to change themselves, to realize their history doesn't define their legacy, and where they start in life doesn't have to be where they finished. And the more I do this, the more power it gives me to transform other people, because I know what it's like to walk this journey of healing. The more my why becomes fully embedded and I surrender to the will of every single direction that this has taken me right now. So when you talk about why, my why was born from the pain and suffering to the triumph, to the ability to connect with people in a way that shows them that they can literally do the same thing if they're willing to do the work and make the choice to say, I'm not a victim. I'm not a survivor. I didn't just make it. I'm not just hanging on. Like, I'm a freaking warrior from the things that have happened to me. I'm a fighter. I'm here. I'm standing, and it's time to change my life. And by changing your life, not only will you change the life of those people right around you, but more importantly, your testimony will be something that saves somebody else's life because you had the courage to save your own and stop living in quiet desperation and step into your extraordinary purpose today. So if you're watching this and you're on the cusp of like, oh, this inner turmoil and angst that you can't ever get rid of, it's time to get to work. It's time to make the choice to choose you. And it's time to find the opportunities by healing yourself where you're going to help heal other people. That's how we save 1 million people in the next decade, is by all of us working together to do it.
Wow. I'm, there's a lot there. Unfortunately, we know this, a lot of the things that you were a victim of or took the brunt of was a generational pattern of life, and you broke it. Your children won't be exposed to that. They will never experience that. They will take the grace of God and the grace and the power that he's given each one of us and be joyful in life and not living a life of fear, that there is hope. You broke that cycle for your family lineage.
Yep.
I mean, that's powerful. And that'll carry generation to generation, because
That's right.
unfortunately we look and track back there's isolated things where somebody just sort of goes off their rocker, but it's usually learned behavior and they just carry it because they don't know any different. That's how they've been victimized, and it's a crazy thing. So you broke it for your family's lineage, and that will give other people hope and create a new legacy story.
Yeah,
we don't have to live a legacy of despair, fear, hate, and all those things. So great story. So now you're victorious in that area. You stood up, you became the warrior, and then you went into corporate world. And you went into, what got you into the military, and what was your role there?
An intelligence officer. Yep, in the Navy.
That almost hurts my brain, intelligence. But anyway.
Used to hurt mine too.
But what got you in the direction of military, and then you went into the corporate world, and you took those experiences, but you had some challenges and meltdowns in those areas as well. You want to share with that, and then we'll get into your core principles if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think life is going to still continue to evolve around you. And we all get so afraid of challenges. So my life has continued to be challenging, but I genuinely take the approach of life happening for you versus to you. And because I do that, I lean into the times of growth and the times when people call it darkness. I'm like, I don't call it dark times. I call it an opportunity for growth if you're looking at it in that way. And if you do, then you really do continue to evolve as a human being and become a better version of yourself by taking that mindset and then moving forward in those most challenging times. And so, for me, going in the military, I lived in a small town. There wasn't a lot of opportunity. I just knew that my life was destined for something greater, but I knew that I couldn't really get that where I was at. And so going into the military was huge for me, and more so than I knew. And I wrote about this in my book. As I flew on that plane there, from Yuma, Arizona is a border town on the southwestern corner of Arizona. So we actually flew out of San Diego to go to Great Lakes, Illinois. And as I made this flight, I remember thinking to myself, like, this is my chance to own my own life. This is my chance, and the decisions I make from this point moving forward are going to change everything for me and my future family, because I always had this yearning for family, because it meant love, it meant acceptance, it meant, so the way my family is now was because I wanted all that, and I did the work. And I thought, nobody knows me, nobody's going to judge me, nobody's going to know my story. Like, this is my chance to lean in heavy. And then I get off the plane, get on a bus, go to Great Lakes, and the first thing they're doing as you step off the bus is screaming in your face. So for
Screaming
me,
face and kick in the butt, right?
like they're in my face, and I mean, I could feel the spit. His nose is almost touching my face, recruiter, and I'll never forget. And I wrote about this in my book too. I'll never forget this moment. I'm triggered in this moment. Because as a man now, I'm bigger. I started lifting weights. I was super protective of women and kids. But if you were a man getting in my face, we were we weren't going to have words. I was going to put some hands on you. And so I think about that time in my life, like how hurt I was, and I would hurt other people because of it. And he's screaming. I'm thinking, who the, what are you talking to? And I go to turn to look at this instructor, and everybody's running in front of me. I don't even realize it. I'm just triggered. I'm like, I'm about to smack this dude in his face. He's like, it's on my face. And he's like, and he pushes me on my shoulder. And he's like, just run, go. And he's barking. And it snapped me out of that trigger. So I was reacting in that moment. So then I run forward and I get, and then we're stacking line. I can see them coming down the line again. It's just, hurry up and get to the next thing so they can yell at you again is what they're doing. So we're all standing in front of this building about to go inside and get our haircuts and all that. And I can see them coming down, yelling at the next person. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, well, this is a game. This is a game. Play the game. It's not personal. It was the first time in my life, unknowingly, that I chose to respond to a trigger versus react. Because here's the reality: we're all gonna get triggered. Whether you went through trauma or you didn't, you still get triggered in life from experiences. Whether you respond or react really has everything to do about your emotional awareness and your mindset. So you got to build those muscles. And so that was my first indication of that. So fast forward, I had two amazing male mentors during my time in the Navy. I had some great leaders, but males for the first time in my life that I looked to in adoration and respect, but also saw the magic in me. And while having that magic in me, seeing it, they pushed me to be better. And I accepted it because, see, I could have not accepted their tutelage. I could have not accepted their mentorship if I just stayed this stuck, hurt little boy inside. That's now a man, but I'm still hurt inside. So I chose to trust a man and accept some of that. And that really helped. And one of my mentors became a naval officer. He was enlisted, became a naval officer. I followed the same path as he did, which was phenomenal. And I wouldn't have done that, I don't think, without his mentorship.
Yeah.
Maybe I could have, but not the same way. And so I am from about 5 different leaders. I'm like a microcosm of those military leaders that really just made me a better man. They made me a better husband. They made me a better father. They made me a better professional. And they really taught me how to lead people with heart and have kind of that work hard, play hard mentality where you're holding a standard, but you're building people to the standard, and then we elevate it together. You're not even holding yourself to a standard, but you're holding everybody else to one here in every facet of your life. And so that's been a huge blessing. And then I went to corporate America. I was promoted 4 times in 5 years. I was crushing it, but I got so burnt out. I love the leadership development piece. I'm doing speaking at corporate America about burnout, how to build mentally healthy cultures with leadership teams and executives, because I know what it's like to have a breakdown because you don't realize that you need to take a break too as a leader, because I'm so busy serving people, and entrepreneurs need to realize this too. And every time I would feel kind of like, oh man, I'm just so burnt out, I'd be like, nope, Captain Resilient, dun, 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 here I am again. I'm going to keep pushing. And that's great to a point. It's a superpower and gift my trauma gave me was massive resilience. But your biggest strength is sometimes also your biggest weakness if you're not careful. And so for me, I had a panic attack in corporate America after 18 months of working about 14 plus hours a day, nonstop, 5 days a week, and then still trying to give time to my directors and my managers that reported to me across 4 different sites in the US and 1 in the Philippines. It was like this massive responsibility. And then trying to be a great father, trying to be a great husband. And meanwhile, I'm trying to give everybody everything I can, but I'm half capacity and I'm giving nothing to me. And so that's what really led me. That was God, again, for me, not to me, having the breakdown so I can see where I'm supposed to go and through the open door that's waiting for me that I couldn't see in that moment because I'm just trying to push through because I wear resilience like a badge of honor. And so it really taught me a lot about taking a break, being okay, sitting back and moving forward.
Wow. Yeah, what you're sharing here is things in our lives are for lessons. Like you say, that's not happening to you; it's happening for you, and it's only through that awareness that you learn from it. And taking care of yourself is an important aspect of how we serve. If we can't take care of ourselves, how can we take care of anybody else?
That's right.
And striving for the bigger promotion, and striving for the bigger paycheck, striving for the recognition, striving for this, those things are not as really important if you don't take care of yourself.
Amen.
Because they mean nothing. They mean nothing. If you fall apart, what value is that to you or anybody else? And many times, you're in the personal development and helping people become themselves. But I've been there myself,
Yeah.
striving to be number one. I'm a competitive guy. I want to win, those type of things. And there's been my times where I hit it, but then there was no joy and reward for it. I said, why did I do this?
It's like relief, right? Not even joy at that moment.
Yeah. And then stepping back and realize what's really important. And sometimes people are like, oh, that's selfish. No, you can't serve if you can't take care of yourself first. And so your story is powerful and that. So let's talk about these. I tell you what, time just can really get in a hurry.
I'm looking at the time now.
In your, I want to promote your book, and we'll make sure people get that. But in a short synopsis here, 4 keys to live an extraordinary life. What are those keys?
Yeah. So the first key is speak your truth. And by the way, these keys were built from my own journey. When I had my breakdown in corporate America and I chose to go down this path of writing my memoir and becoming a speaker and trainer, my wife asked me, she goes, how did you really heal? And I thought, damn, that's a pretty good question. I don't know that I've ever really thought about it. And so I didn't run to the internet and see what therapists and psychologists say or anything. I just said, what were the pivotal moments of my life that changed everything for me? And so I came up with these 4 different keys, these steps that I teach people and that I coach people through. The first one, speak your truth. First time I spoke my truth was to that police officer that day that arrested my father. The second time was in court. And then it just carried on. It wasn't like I was like, here's my truth and everything, all the deep secrets that I'm hanging on to that are just poisoning my soul. Here's my truth. No, it comes in layers. It's like the bloomin' onion that you get, right? It's like the bloomin', and you open it up and it's like you peel one, you peel the other, peel, and at some point you get to the core. And then when it's fully open, it's like this beautiful thing that just comes out of you. It's literally, I relate it to drowning your whole life, just gasping for air every once in a while, just hanging on, just surviving and moving into truly living triumphant and thriving. So speak your truth is the first thing that I teach people, because speaking your truth will literally remove shame the second you start doing it. It gives you power in your story. It helps you see how much of a warrior you actually really are. And it helps you start to see some of the other things we're going to talk about here in a second. So speak your truth. 1, accepting your trauma for what it is. I can't tell you, Tom, how many people that say, well, my dad did as good as he could. He was better than his father. It's such a cop out, right? Or I'm doing my best right now. This is all I got. But that's a cop out. It's an easy way to say I'm not actually willing to do the work or be honest with myself. So being honest with yourself and saying, like, I was locked in basements. I was chained to bed. I was starved. I was tortured. I was beat. All these things happened. I can't change them. But what I can do is, instead of them being an anchor that's going to drown my life, I can start using those as fuel for everything that I do from this day moving forward. And so accepting those things and then acknowledging the emotions that come with it. And as a man, that was hard for me to acknowledge that hurt little boy that was inside of me, that would lash out at any man and try to fight, that would, never feel fully complete or loved, that would feel abandoned in moments when it was unnecessary, that felt alone and isolated and full of shame and guilt. I had to acknowledge all these emotions that were stirring in here, so that this life bucket that we have, I can remove some of these traumatic things that I'm hanging on to and emotions and start to fill that life bucket with love. Because see, my want to live a great life, my want to be a father, my want to be a great husband, professional, friend, whatever you want to call it, right? That never changed. I always wanted to do that up here. My ability to do that was less because my life bucket was full of trauma. So as you remove those things, you can replace that with love. And just the way you move through the world starts to really change. So speak your truth, accept your trauma, acknowledge the emotions, and then forgiveness. And forgiveness was tough for me. I forgave my parents a lot easier. It didn't mean I didn't have boundaries. It didn't mean I didn't think that it was okay what they did. I didn't run to them and tell them, "Hey, it's okay. I forgive you. You're absolved." What I realized was I was hanging on to hate, not just anger, hate in my heart for my parents, but especially for my stepfather, Bruce, who used to throw me into that basement. Hate. I saw him at 19 randomly, and literally, I told my mom, if you don't make him leave, I'm going to go stab him. I'm not playing. I was so angry inside, and the hate was fueling. And I didn't want to let them off the hook. And I didn't want them to think that it was okay. And I thought all these feelings as I hung on to this anger and hate and all the other emotions that I had. And I realized they're still living their miserable lives because they've never had the courage to face their own trauma. And they don't even know how I feel, nor could they ever say anything to make it okay. I got to let go of this for me. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't want to live in this pit of despair. I don't want to hate. I don't want to feel angry. And more importantly, my future wife and my children don't deserve to have somebody like that. And I was so afraid of repeating the generational cycle that I knew I had to continue to do the work. So I forgave. I forgave because I realized that all of my abusers were also abused themselves. I forgave because those hurt kids inside of them that they never they never helped heal became hurt adults that hurt me. And that's just the reality of how it happens. So forgiveness is huge. And then the last thing is, as I forgave, as I really let go of this hatred and this pain and this shame and this anger and all these emotions that I was feeling in, and I call it a pit of despair, right? As I lived in this pit of despair, and I'm like looking up, and I know there's light, but I just don't know how the hell to get to it. And I'm going through this, speaking your truth, and I'm telling my story more, accepting and acknowledging the trauma and the emotions and forgiveness. I started exposing my superpowers: empathy and grit and resilience and initiative and compassion and the ability to connect with people and create a safe space for other people. And as I realized that, like, holy shit, like these things that I've been through actually gifted me amazing abilities in life. I started to find the ultimate power in my story. And instead of running from the trauma that will chase you till the day you die, look, guys, trauma don't get tired. It will find you. You can't hide from it. It will never stop. You have to turn and face it and knock it to the ground one last time so you can keep looking out the windshield of life. It is literally the difference between like driving on the freeway in life or sitting at a stoplight. It's that drastic. And when you realize the gifts your trauma gives you and how you can utilize those gifts to help change humanity, whew, well, I'm living my best life. I'm literally unlocked like 25% more happiness I didn't even know I was missing out on by taking this approach, by living these 4 keys, and now by teaching other people to do the same thing, which has elevated me even more in my own personal happiness than I ever even thought possible. It's man, it's beautiful, bro.
You know, you're saying some things, just triggering some incredible thoughts, and forgiveness. And people really, it's like you said, it's not about saying, "Oh, everything's fine, I forgive you." No, it's that release. You're letting go of the past. You're forgiving. It's for you, so you can move on out of hate, anger, and all the things that trauma created. And so people really need to understand and do some, counseling on forgiveness. That could be from a spiritual leader, that could be from somebody, because it is a powerful thing when we can really release, not just cognitively, but that deep emotional thing. That's what
Yes.
I can say. I'm sort of lost for words there. And then you said something too, in our life is, best way I can put it is, how do you make a sword? You put it under heat and pressure and you bang it. Boom, you make it becomes stronger, you forge it. And going through what you do is you put that iron, and it was in the fire, but you came out and you became the hammer on the anvil. You changed that piece of steel to a tool that has a sharp edge, and it gives you a tool to carve out the rest of your life. That's how I'm interpreting what you're saying. So, you know, we can reforge our lives by recognizing what you've been sharing. So your story is awesome, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
I'm on the verge of welling up here. So, so that was the four principles, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And is that outlined in your book?
It is. I'll tell you a quick 60-second story about this. You know what's really cool?
Take as much as you want, bro.
So this is, I know we're going to talk about the book, but just for people's edification, this was my view as a little boy with my stepfather at the top of the stairs, and the artist put literally the mask that was thrown down there with me. I found a picture of it, and it's superimposed into the concrete, right? And I want people to know. You talked about this. I didn't go tell this man that threw me down there I forgave him. I think this is so important. I didn't tell him that I forgave him because I see people get hung up on this all the time. I just forgave him because I had empathy for the things that he had been through. I found out later, because it's my little sister's dad, on his deathbed, Tom, he goes, "My life's biggest regret is the way I treated your brother and sister." On his deathbed. I didn't even know that till last year. He's passed away like 5 years ago. But to me, because I had forgave, it didn't trigger me emotionally one way or the other. You guys, I want you to hear this. Forgiveness is for you. Forgiveness is for you to move on. Forgiveness is for you to be able to be 100% the person that God made you to be. And I love that forged in the fire mentality. And not only do you end up building a sword that could protect you, you start protecting other people as part of it. And that's what these 4 keys is. This is my sword. These 4 keys are my sword that I use how to teach people to do the same thing so that they can go on and do that. And I wrote it in this book on purpose, even though I was told not to by quite a few different coaches and authors. They're like, write another book. I'm like, I don't know. When somebody finishes my story, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe this dude made it. Like, if that guy can make it, I can too. The missing component for me for years was I don't know how to make it. I don't know how. So what I wanted to leave is people on the precipice of this mountaintop, and they're on the top and they're like, yes, and they're getting ready to go over the top. I don't want them to slide down. I want to give them the 4 keys right inside this book in the last chapter so that they can understand how to start doing that work. And it's what my master class is. It's what the course I'm building is going to be. Everything is around those 4 key principles, but you can even get the basics of that by reading the book and hear the pivotal stories in my story when I found out, when it was like, click, that's what it is. That's the power in speaking your truth, the power in all these other things. And the knowing and owning your superpowers that you've gotten from your story. I couldn't live my life and do what I'm doing without my story. All the pain, all the abuse, all the trauma, all the everything made me who I am. I can do what I can do because of my story, because I chose to run through the fear, because I understand the value of healing. So if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like, well, that's good for you. Well, no, it's not good for me. It's good for you too. It was good for Tom. It was good for Ted. It's good for anybody who hears this to start to alleviate that pain and step into the person you were meant to be.
And we all experience trauma to one degree or another. The trauma that you experience, I can't comprehend that. but we were all traumatized at somewhere, some abuse, some unkind word that carries over, and it may affected me, but may not affected my brother or sisters. And so what you're sharing, it doesn't make any difference the magnitude of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's an anchor. And, the things that you shared with today, don't compare your trauma with yours or yours. There's people that have greater problems. There's people that have bigger traumas than yours, and that's hard to comprehend, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the littlest traumas are ruin lives. Doesn't allow a person to be their fullest potential. And we're gifted. Each person, you had that angel that day that knocked the knife out of your hand. You heard the voice, and you're living your purpose. You've been in the fire. You put that iron in the fire. Now you have steel. It's sharpened. And now you are the true warrior. And this is amazing how this all came out. This isn't scripted, my friend. This is the flow of your message. It's stimulating me to my creativity and what I love hearing, and the power what you said is incredible. So I recognize your power and yield to you, my friend.
Well, can I add one thing, Tom, to that? I think this is so important. And I love that you brought this up, because I hadn't brought it up yet. Comparison is a thief of joy. I don't care if you're comparing yourself to somebody who has more success you're trying to get to. We all see this iceberg and we only see the top, right? It's that whole mentality around that. But comparison is also the thief of joy if you compare trauma. Look, guys, like whether you went through 5 minutes of it or 15 years like I did is irrelevant. Whether you've healed from it or haven't healed from it yet is irrelevant. Your trauma is your trauma. Don't ever compare. What you do when you compare is you add shame to something that you're already feeling that emotion from in your life. So don't ever compare, because comparison will literally stack shame and steal your joy. Just say, you know what? If you're going to compare to me, just say, well, damn, if that guy can make it, so can I. There's nothing special about Walt other than the fact that he made a choice to live his best life and be extraordinary. You could do the same thing if you make the choice, regardless of what kind of trauma you've been through. So all I do is I wanted to make sure we really drive home that point. Don't compare, other than just to allow me and Tom and Ted, allow us to give you not inspiration or motivation, to give you the unequivocal belief, like to your core, your humanity. Like, I believe in this so much because I freaking lived it. To believe that your history doesn't define your legacy, to believe where you started doesn't have to be where you finish, to believe if you're 60 years old and you're watching this and you're like, you know what, whether I've got 6 months or 66 years left, I want to live happy too, that you can do it. It's just, it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey, what's happened to you, make the choice to love you, to do the work, and live extraordinary.
Powerful. You said something to belief. It's not just the word belief, and many times that could be it could be a belief could be a very weak way to approach life. It's with certainty. You have certainty that the outcome is real. That's faith with certainty. That's a great friend of mine brought clarity to me, is that faith is one, and belief and faith are those types of words that have power, but they're also very weak words until you make them certain. Absolute. Nothing will change when you have that certainty, that belief at a deep emotional level. And no matter whether it be the trauma we're talking about, or going after the big goals and dreams, or whatever it is that you were an athlete, it's that certainty that gets you through the end. So I just wanted to just throw that in.
I love that.
In my commentary. So you're awesome, dude, man. We just recently, saw your interview with Ken, and we had a couple of conversations. What day of the week are we doing?
I know, right?
Panic. Okay, but we're here, and keep up the good work, man.
Thank you, brother.
Love to have you back on any of my platforms. People need to hear the message. hope with certainty, faith and belief with certainty, is get that piece of iron forged.
Yeah.
Pound it out, get it sharp, be that warrior that we all have. And warrior is not a negative thing. A warrior
No,
is not destroying. A warrior is what? Conquering something of what we desire.
that's right. That's right. A warrior is a fighter. A warrior loves. A warrior is a protector. Like a warrior is so much more than we even give that word credit for. And each of us have that inside of us. We just need to embrace that inner warrior.
Yeah. Wow. I tell you what, 1 hour, what a great thing. I always like to close out with this is that I appreciate you being here today. You touch my heart. You touch my spirit. And I know that those that hear this replay and share it out with people, we never know, right? Whose life we can save today. And that could be the physical life, but just that new outlook.
Yeah.
And that's a life-saving principle in itself. They give somebody hope. What would be the last thing that you would like to leave? I mean, you threw some things out there that I don't know if we can top that again, but what's the one last thought that you may want to leave today in closing out?
I think it's really just the understanding that you do have your whole life ahead of you starting from today, no matter how much time that is. And why wouldn't you choose to do the work? Because again, you can have belief, you can have certainty, but there's work that comes after that. The belief and certainty get you to push through those times. Why wouldn't you do the work to live happy, to live full of joy, to be able to affect your people, not only you, but the people around you in such a profound way that will literally last for generations? Make this your calling card. If you're watching this, you were meant to see it. Make this your calling card. Do the work. Contact us if you need help with it. But I'm telling you, your history doesn't define your legacy. Today is the day that you decide that's true. And be blessed so you can be a blessing. Thank you so much for having me on, Tom. I really appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you in the green room, under contract. You said you wanted blue M&M. So enjoy the blue. But you just hang tight and I'll just wrap this up here. So appreciate you, my friend.
All right, brother. Take care, everybody.
G-Force. It's gratitude that he's crossed my path. Just another light that has come into my life. And hopefully it left you with the same light and hope as well. G-Force. G is for gratitude. He said something there in the closing. What we have, whatever happened in the past is the past. We can learn from it. We can forge ourselves forward with it. But this is the best moment of your life, this very moment. And what decisions we make at this very minute with gratitude will take you in a trajectory you can't even comprehend. Practice gratitude. Be grateful for this moment because it's the most valuable thing that you have. No guarantee for the future. The past is the past. You own this moment at this time and do something with it to improve yourself. That's G-Force. Have a great day.